Alright friends, I'm just gonna say it now. I like Dark Souls 2. Alright, now it's out. I've said it. Yes, that's exactly what I said in part 1 of the Dark Souls 2 documentary. And of course, I stand by that. Because even though we vented our frustrations quite a bit in part 2, Dark Souls 2 is still a masterpiece of its time. Because Dark Souls 2 did a lot of things right, things that many people might not even be aware of. And that's exactly why today we're gonna take a look at the good sides of Dark Souls 2, because there are so many beautiful moments and stories that you can only experience in Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 brought a variety of new mechanics and elements to the game, but you usually only notice them if you take the time to examine your surroundings closely and interact with the game world. If you don't do that, a sense of frustration can very quickly begin to build up, which is why Dark Souls 2 is often criticized and particularly hated for its long distances. But especially the Scholar Edition made Dark Souls 2 a lot easier. In fact, the environment in Dark Souls 2 offers you often opportunities to gain an advantage, even if there are many enemies.
Absolutely everything that was located right inside of the spacious, quiet, and dimly lit room. Is now currently present.
Wait, wrong game. The Shaded Woods is one of the environments that many players don't like in Dark Souls 2. Invisible enemies. There is no real sense of direction here, but everyone who enters this deep forest is curious. What wonderful and mysterious treasures might I find hidden here? Should I really go in there? Yes, you definitely should, because the invisible enemies aren't actually that strong. All throughout the forest there are these trees that you can hit, and when you do, the tree makes a sound, and it sounds something like this. That sound actually attracts the invisible enemies, and then you can easily catch them in a chokehold. It's really fun to mess with the enemies like this and loot the entire forest. And there are plenty more examples of this. Later on you can even find a ring that lets you see invisible enemies. And there are even invisible ladders. In Iron Keep, which is hated by many, you can use almost all the traps against the enemies. So first, I drown the first guy in the lava, I take care of the archer myself, but I let the other two fall down nicely and get a ton of souls in the process. The little buttons on the ground make it really easy for me to get through this section. I also take out the next enemies with the trap without them even touching me once. Then I burn the last guy in the fire as well, and in no time at all, I've got 10,000 souls in the bank. So I think to myself, let's do it again, farming souls. So if you use Iron Keep to your advantage, the level actually isn't that hard. Here are a few more examples of good level design in Dark Souls 2. Critics. If doors are closed, you can try to break them down or even knock so that the guard behind the door opens it for you. I can change the boss room of Medusa and drain the poison. To do that, I just need to have explored the level well beforehand, and then I'll quickly find a windmill that I can burn, so that Medusa can't heal herself as well anymore, and the boss fight becomes much easier. Okay, I have to say that in my opinion, the boss fights in Dark Souls 2 are actually a bit too easy for my liking. But there's more. In No Man's Wharf, for example, I can light up the entire area if I've used a Pharos Lockstone. The level then becomes not only extremely bright, but the monsters also become skittish. That's because they don't like light. By the way, I can provoke the same reaction with a torch. But as soon as I corner the enemies, they become aggressive. Really awesome game mechanic in my opinion. By the way, this also works with many other enemies that are vulnerable to light. In general, Dark Souls 2 works much more with the worlds than with the boss enemies, especially with light and shadow. So I can not only light up the No Man's Wharf, but also open windows in a dark room, open the windows to let more light in. I can then see the enemies and the environment better, but be careful, the enemies can now see you better too. You really notice this with the boss, the Lost Sinner. That guy is super fast, and when he's in the dark, you can't lock onto him as easily. So after you die for the first time, you grab your torch and then head into the boss room. Now that you can see him better, you can also lock onto him and dodge his attacks more easily. Some particularly observant players have even discovered that you can completely illuminate the entire boss room if you light the torches outside. But there are also entire sections that are completely dark, and honestly that made me nervous. Armed with only a torch and a sword, I fight my way through the depths and have to watch every step, because everything looks like you could fall down here. I mark my path by lighting sources of light so I know where I've already been and where I haven't, and suddenly this ugly thing comes around the corner. And someone wants to tell me the enemy design is boring. But I go deeper and find an ant queen in a cave. What is she doing? What does she do? Apparently she is peaceful, but if I actually hit her with a heavy whip, the powerful ant queen even starts to heal me with a strange poisonous mist. Nice, I think to myself at first. She heals me, but completely unknowingly this mist also eats away at my armor durability. And it goes much deeper into the dark, into the depths. Stories like this happen to you often in Dark Souls 2, and things like that stick with me more than when I can get through modern games almost without dying, all the way to the final boss. But there are many stories in Dark Souls 2, and they're just as intricate and convoluted as you know them from FromSoftware games. In my first playthrough, the only thing I truly understood was,
go forth and seek souls, greater, more powerful souls. Seek the rightful king. That is the only way.
yeah, I know I have to seek the king, that's clear to me, over and over again. But do you ever meet people who tell a nice story? And in the second playthrough, of course, I want to learn more about it. And in NG+, Dark Souls 2 truly excelled in its execution. Because in NG+, not only do the enemies' levels change significantly, but the enemies themselves do as well. So in many specific locations you will encounter entirely different enemies. And even the boss mechanics change in some cases. On top of that, in NG+, there are new items to find, and many other aspects make NG+ in Dark Souls 2 the best NG+ in all Souls games. And this exact system is what I would wish for the other FromSoftware games as well. It's as if there's a kind of mini randomizer at play in NG+ here. But the best part is you don't even have to go into NG+ to get this experience. At the bonfire, you can use a human effigy to send the current area into NG+. That way you can take on a cool boss again and also farm everything that was available in that level once more. There are also hidden weapon skins to find that are only available in NG+. Pretty crazy, but be careful, the progress can't be undone. So please, no hate if you get your ass kicked. But how awesome would this feature have been in Elden Ring, for example? That would have been amazing. What I found most incredibly interesting during my very first playthrough about 10 years ago was the mysterious hole. I was so curious about what might be down there. You could already see that there was something there. But if you just jump down, you will definitely die on the beam. I kept looking into the hole again and again. How do I get down there? Suddenly there's a guy sitting next to the hole, someone I had met before. He wants to sell me a ladder and asks me to name the price. Now just don't mess this up. Don't be too stingy. When I handed over the 3,000 souls to him, he set up a ladder for me. And finally, I can explore the hole. How awesome was that? But as an attentive player, I could have noticed that you can buy a cat ring from the cat, which reduces fall damage. Still, it was an incredibly cool experience that I definitely won't forget anytime soon. Considering that Yui Tanimura had to piece the levels together in segments, some really cool ones came out of it. Some great sections were created. Sometimes they're connected in a weird way, but overall there are many beautiful places. And above all, the DLCs really spruced everything up again. As mentioned before, the level design in the different areas is really well done. If you overlook the fact that the level connections aren't always optimal, I still keep finding myself in some really cool places, locations that have different mechanics. Here I can interact much more with the world. And for example, wake up statues with new NPCs. I can even give this lady here some new clothes, which she then puts on. And she puts on a really cool fashion show. I also meet this guy here who just happens to have the moon sword with him. I'm definitely going to follow you everywhere, brother. I'm sure you also remember Dragon Mountain and the dragon eggs. Here, you can just walk by peacefully and let the dragon sleep. But if you destroy more than 3 dragon eggs, the dragons will get angry. And the more eggs you destroy, the worse the crossing over the suspension bridge will get. The dragons will actually tear it down if you haven't killed them beforehand. But if you leave all the eggs alone, you can just walk across the bridge normally. Also, the dragons do significantly more damage if you break all the eggs beforehand. Shame on you. As you can see, Dark Souls 2 has an incredible amount to offer. And everything that makes a good FromSoftware game: secrets, hidden boss enemies, mysterious lore, and a good level of difficulty. You could also revive NPCs here, which I thought was pretty cool and definitely helped some players in other games as well. Even though the bosses are sometimes a bit too easy, they all have their own mechanics. For example, Jabba here can be fed humans to distract him. But it's especially the game world with which you can interact in so many ways that makes Dark Souls 2 so remarkable. Souls 2 incredibly good and still really enjoyable to play even in 2025. Although Dark Souls 2 is often criticized, I personally always had a lot of fun with this installment. And I think anyone who just pays attention while exploring the game world can feel the same way. Besides, I might also make a few cool beginner guides for you, which will make things even easier. But the most important thing is that Dark Souls 2 is fun for you, that you enjoy it, and if that's the case, it could be the best game in the world for you too. Tastes differ, but if you like FromSoftware games, you should definitely give Dark Souls 2 a try. Or even give the game a second chance. Because Dark Souls 2 is fantastic.